without further ado, guys, let's get into this main event. And it's going down in the middleweight division, 185 pounds. We've got two guys with exceptional records, 21-2 as a professional. It's Dricus Du Plessis, and we're looking at his UFC resume, 7-0 within the promotion. So a fantastic record, undefeated in the promotion, 21-2 overall as a professional. And he's the younger fighter as well, 30 years of age coming into this bout. Basically a young champion, right? A guy who's got a slight height and reach disadvantage, though, in this fight. He's standing 6'1" with a 76-inch reach. And Israel Adesanya is a lot taller. He's a lot longer, 6'4" with an 80-inch reach. But he is going to be 35 years of age at the time of this fight. So he's 5 years the elder of the champion, Dricus Du Plessis, but the former champion, Israel Adesanya, is 24-3 as a professional. Fantastic record in his own right. And in the UFC, guys, 13-3. So way more UFC fights, a lot more UFC experience. And I think that on paper, both these guys present a lot of real challenges for each other. I want to say shout out to our guy, Adolfo, in the chat, says hit the like. Fellas, Liam puts in the time and work for us. I got to say to the fellas and the ladies, looking at my YouTube analytics, we got 1%, women viewers as well. So thank you to the 1 or 2 ladies that may be rocking with us live. I hope that you guys are enjoying the show, but all the fellas as well, hit the like button. I appreciate everybody for the support. Now, when we're looking at this fight, I'm saying to myself, okay, let's look at Israel Adesanya and what has been happening with him lately. So first of all, he is 1-2 in his last 3 fights, and he's the favorite coming in. So that's interesting off, rip, right? That's an interesting note. He lost to Sean Strickland. He was a massive favorite going into that contest. I believe Sean Strickland closed a plus 500 underdog, if my memory serves. So massive underdog there in Sean Strickland. And one of my biggest betting regrets ever is not betting Sean Strickland against Israel Adesanya. And I know it's easy to say after the fact, but I have a lot of my notes, a lot of my stuff in an archive, right? A drive, and I continuously add to it. And I could just tell you guys that, in my notes, I wrote down, I think that anybody being plus 500 in a UFC middleweight title fight is pretty absurd. Right? Like plus 500 in this middleweight title fight. I was like, does Sean Strickland not know how to fight? I mean, he's had many fights. He could get knocked out. That's always a live possibility. But if he doesn't get knocked out, is he really going to get blown out on the cards? And ultimately, I had thought to myself, I was like, if Sean implements some wrestling and grappling, he could maybe surprise Izzy, maybe get him down, maybe make him uncomfortable, maybe make him a little tired. I was like, if he accomplishes that, who knows? Maybe he could submit this guy. Israel Adesanya obviously has come a long way in his grappling, but Sean Strickland was a grappler before he got to the UFC, and he's been in the UFC since he was like 18, right? It's like, I'm half kidding, but you look at Sean Strickland's career, he's been around forever, and he was a jiu-jitsu guy first. So I just started talking myself into all the different ways Sean Strickland could win the fight. And I was like, at plus 500, it's got to be a dog or pass situation. Now, I ended up betting the fight not to go the distance in that spot, and Strickland goes out there. He drops Izzy in the first round, and then he was more than happy to just point kickbox with him in the rounds 3 through 5. He lost round 2 on all 3 judges' scorecards, but comes back out, wins rounds 3 through 5, and just set the pace on Izzy, walked him down, and ultimately did not close the show there. And so for me, I ended up taking a good read and taking a chalk loser. I think it might have been minus 125 or something for the fight not to go the distance. This is all from my memory. I could be wrong on these numbers. But when you're looking, that's just gutting. When you say to yourself, like, this is value, you should be taking this plus 500. You don't take it, and then you get burned, right? So then you're in a spot where, okay, I missed the boat on the big Izzy fade. There's no doubt about that, right? We're not going to see plus 500 either way on this kind of contest. But Izzy was an older champion going into that fight with Sean, and certainly he was at the peak of his betting popularity, right? I think he had closed a similar price against Jerry Cannonier, but it's not like that was the price he was closing in most of his fights. I think he closed minus 125 against Alex Pereira in the rematch, even though he had just lost the time prior. Actually closed minus 150 in that spot. He closed minus 225 against Alex Pereira the night that he lost at Madison Square Garden. he closed a minus 550 favorite against Jared Cannonier. Cannonier was about a plus 400 on the comeback at UFC 276 in July. And then he was minus 300 against Robert Whittaker when he won a unanimous decision. I thought it was a close decision. I bet Whittaker by decision plus 550, I believe, in that fight. And ultimately, it played out pretty close. So you look at Izzy, and he had a lot of close decisions leading up to the Alex Pereira fight. I think that the Jared Cannonier fight was definitely a stinker, but it was probably, 3 rounds to 2 for Izzy, maybe 4 rounds to 1. And the Whittaker fight was like 3 rounds to 2, very close fight. Pereira, that was a fight where both guys were winning rounds. They were winning minutes. Izzy almost knocked him out in the first round. And then obviously Pereira was able to stick it to him in the 5th round. So looking at Izzy's recent run, it's not like it's been bad. I mean, beating Alex Pereira, it's like one of the single best wins in MMA that you could have, right? But additionally, losing to Sean Strickland. Sean's a guy that's very quality, but he's also 16-6 in the UFC. And, aside from the Dricus fight recently, he beat Paulo Costa, he beat Izzy, he beat Abus Magomedov, and he beat Nasruddin Imavov on short notice. But he lost to Cannonier. He got knocked out by Alex Pereira. So it's not like Sean was on like a lights out run forever. He had just put together a couple wins. So you look at, the fight with Alex, great win. But even in that fight, guys, he was getting leg kicked a lot. He was taking some damage in the early going. I'm not sure that he won the first round. In fact, I'm curious to see, the scorecards for Adesanya and Pereira too, because is this the night? Yeah, let's see. So the completed scorecards. Don't mean for any dead air here, folks. No, Adesanya ended up winning the first round on all 3 judges' scorecards. So interesting. He went out there. He won the first round. It was a very close round with Pereira. He was getting eaten up with the leg kicks a little bit, and then he knocks him clean out. So the thing I'll note about these fights is, number one, Sean Strickland, let's just look at the measurables. He was 6'1" with a 76-inch reach, and that's pretty comparable to Dricus. Dricus is 6'1" with a 76-inch reach. It's the exact same. So he did lose to a guy with this frame. We want to keep that in mind. We also want to note, he fought Alex Pereira, who's huge, right? Nobody thinks of him as a small guy. People are talking about him fighting Tom Aspinall next at heavyweight and shit like that, right? So obviously Alex Pereira is huge. Jared Cannonier is a big middleweight. He used to fight at heavyweight, no problem. Then you look at, Robert Whittaker. He's a former welterweight. Marvin Vettori, career middleweight. Fought Jan Blachowicz, a light heavyweight. So he's fought a bunch of big guys, and now he's taking on a guy who's very muscular. He's very strong. And I think that it's always important to look at analogs throughout somebody's career. So some of the fights that do come to mind are in terms of the takedown defense of Izzy, because one thing that we haven't seen tested that much is how does Izzy do when he's forced to wrestle and grapple? And we've definitely seen some concerning moments in the Pereira fight, right? Where, he's not able to get off on clean wrestling and grappling. A lot of it looked very sloppy in those exchanges. And granted, he's trying to wrestle a giant, but admittedly just wasn't great. And the same thing with the Jan Blachowicz fights where he's getting taken down, getting held down a little bit. Let's pull up UFC stats and talk specifically about Adesanya's recent run with numbers and details to back it up. So first of all, Sean Strickland landed a knockdown. There was no takedowns in the fight. In the second fight with Pereira, Izzy landed a knockdown. There were no takedowns in the fight, but he got outlanded on significant strikes in his last 3 contests, 91-86 in the Pereira fight where he got knocked out, 49-41 in the Pereira fight where he knocked out Pereira, and then 137-94 against Sean Strickland. So definitely interesting to note that he has been outlanded over his last 3 contests, and he's landed less than his peak against Jared Cannonier at 116 significant strikes in each of his subsequent contests. Actually, he did land 119 against Brad Tavares back in the day. So about 120 is the significant strike ceiling, I would say, of a guy like Israel Adesanya, even over 5 rounds. Meanwhile, Dricus Du Plessis last time out did land 137 significant strikes in a fight where he got outlanded by 40 shots from Sean Strickland. So Sean Strickland just outlands people, right? He outlanded both of these guys at distance, and that's a credit to him over 5 rounds. I think that oh shit. I thought you were my brother, Brian, I thought you were saying you saw me in the MMA clown show. Which I wouldn't be surprised. You know, when you're on a cold streak, you could end up anywhere. But I thought that you were talking to me. That's so funny. God bless, guys. I hope that you are enjoying the program. But all things considered, guys, when you're looking at Israel Adesanya, he's done a good job against some wrestlers in the past, like Derek Brunson, making them uncomfortable, trying to hit them with big counters as they enter range, trying to keep them from getting a consolidated position on top. And I would say that he's good at stopping takedowns as they're starting, at avoiding letting people in on entries. He does a good job of using his footwork, to avoid getting people to hold on to them. However, when he gets into those grappling exchanges, I think that's where it could get really dicey for him, because it's the fights where he has been taken down where things have, not always gone his way, right? For example, Robert Whittaker was able to get 4 takedowns against him, and he was only able to accrue 3 minutes and 40 seconds of control time. However, he's a little bit of a smaller guy. Marvin Vettori is a guy that doesn't have great top control, and he had a really terrible game plan, in my humble opinion, for the Adesanya rematch. However, he was able to achieve 4 takedowns over the course of that fight. And if UFC stats will load, I will tell you how much control time he was able to accumulate as well. 6 minutes and 55 seconds of control time. So you're seeing 10 minutes of control time against 2 guys that both have skills, that both are credentialed grapplers, but maybe they're not as physical. Maybe they're not as assertive in the wrestling and the grappling as a guy like Du Plessis. I think that's something that we should note. Additionally, Jan Blachowicz, 3 takedowns on 5 attempts for 7 minutes of control time. That was huge in the fight with Izzy. That was really important for him to go get a win. So I think that's something that we want to keep in the back of our mind, is what are the paths to victory and what are the things that could go wrong? Because we're not just talking about Israel Adesanya coming back, getting a big championship opportunity. We're talking about, does he deserve to be a chalk favorite in this return fight for a championship belt? And I think that you can make an argument that you don't want to overcorrect the steering wheel, right? It was just the biggest favorite, in a championship match that you can remember recently, right? At minus 750. But now it's like, should we overcorrect the steering wheel and make him an underdog because he lost there? It does become a difficult question. Meanwhile, you got a lot of controversy on the Dricus Du Plessis side. Let's talk about Dricus for a little bit. Okay, we got Dricus Du Plessis, and I mentioned he's got a 7-0 record in the UFC. That's impeccable. That's a great record. Nothing you could say negative about it. But let's talk about fight by fight. So first fight that we're going to talk about is the most recent, Sean Strickland. He goes to a split decision. A lot of people had a problem with that decision. I thought that he did go out there and win that. I predicted in the lead up to that fight that he would have the best wrestling performance against, Sean Strickland since Kamaru Usman. And I did feel very vindicated in that perspective. 6 takedowns, and he racked up just 2 minutes of control time on top. That's what's concerning, right? Is he was able to go out there and get takedowns, interrupt the process of Strickland, make Strickland work a little bit harder to get back up to his feet, to panic a little bit when he was getting back up to his feet. But that's still a potential liability when you look at Israel Adesanya, is could he give up some takedowns in this spot? I think that's definitely a possibility. And we've seen Dricus multiple times achieve many takedowns. Against Darren Till, guys, 6 takedowns that he achieved over the course of that fight before submitting Darren Till. And he was able to achieve 5 minutes of control in that fight. Now, Darren Till does not have very good takedown defense. What he does is, he tries to make the most of his opportunities on the feet. He landed some big shots against Derek Brunson, but every time he was getting taken down, he was getting his guard passed. He's making terrible decisions. Derek was able to take him down, flat back him into the mount. So I think that we've seen Dricus Du Plessis assert himself physically over a lot of his opponents. In that first round, he had almost gotten Till out of there by using the wrist ride, right? Like he basically reached around, grabbed the wrist, rolled it in, and started just hammering huge shots. And he almost got him out of there very quickly. And he spent a ton of energy. It looked like he might be a spent force. It looked like Till was maybe going to get him out of there, right? Like my guy Oloshawan saying, he was lighting DDP up in the second round, no doubt about it. Guys, I will also say this. I've bet DDP in a bunch of his fights. You know the only guy I bet against DDP with in the UFC? Darren Till. And it's because I thought that he had a chance to go out there and knock him out. And it's just because when you look at Darren Till, he's a guy that can be taken down. He can be held down, but he needed that fight for his career, right? So I thought the motivation was going to be all-time high, and I thought he was going to go out there and swing. I thought he was going to go out there and try and land big shots. I didn't think he was going to quit at the first sign of adversity because he needed to win, and he went out there and gave you everything he had. Unfortunately, he was going against a championship-level guy, and he's just not built of the same metal, in my humble opinion, right? We just saw how he got dealt with accordingly by Tyron Woodley in a championship fight. You know, the bright lights got to him a little bit, and, you know, he got blitzkrieged. He never had a chance in that fight. And a lot of the big moments of his career, unfortunately, and he's still a young enough man that he could change this fact, but a lot of the big moments of his career have been disappointing. You know, I think he had that big fight in England against Masvidal. He ended up getting put out cold badly in that fight. So you just see that Darren Till, career underperformer in terms of his talent on the feet. He's sensational. He lands big shots, big knees. He almost knocked out Robert Whittaker. People forget that, but he landed a huge shot there. He does good with the elbows, with the knees, with unconventional shots. And you got to remember, Du Plessis goes out there. He thinks he's got the finish secured. So he's grabbing a hold of the wrist. He's punching. He thinks he's got this guy all finished. And then he's spent. He's got all this gas wasted. So he needed to recoup, recharge, recover. And then he came back out in round 3, got the fight where he needed to, and was able to finish a guy like Darren Till and effectively end his UFC career in the process. So absolute gangster move there by Dricus Du Plessis. You look at the Derek Brunson fight. He landed a ton of huge shots there. He was able to take out, one of my favorite fighters, Derek Brunson. Then you look at Robert Whittaker. That's where Dricus Du Plessis had a little bit of a coming out party, right? Robert Whittaker is widely regarded for having very good takedown defense. You know, he's known for basically saying like, Yoel Romero, get in on my legs if you think you could take me down, right? Like offering the legs to him. And a lot of the time, Yoel was not able to get him down. He was not able to flat back him. He was not able to put him down. He was able to bounce him into the fence. And then he was just able to find a way to stay upright, find a way to force you deeper onto the single leg, find a way to land short shots while you're holding onto the leg. There's just a lot of savvy things that Robert Whittaker does. And he's a good wrestler, right? He's a Commonwealth level wrestler in terms of his local country, his market of Australia. And what we saw from Du Plessis is as soon as they started engaging in the clinch, Robert got sent ass over tea kettle, and that's just the way it is, right? Robert was the one that tried to initiate the clinch. Du Plessis was kind of coming in, landed a couple shots. Rob went to grab a hold of him. Du Plessis said, get over here. He sat him down with that little side headlock and a lot of impact on it. And then you just see this guy knows how to pass the guard. This guy knows how to operate from on top. He can be very savage in those positions as well. Elbows. One of the things I like to see, it's like part of the new MMA meta. You grab through looking for that darce, right? Like if I'm looking for a darce or an anaconda series, I have the head shoved down. I'm looking to get my arm through and then lock it up, right? But imagine that I can't get my arm all the way through. I can't cinch it on the other side. Should I just waste the grip? No, use it to frame off big elbows. And if they then start reacting to the elbows, clinching themselves forward, what do? Then you go back to the choke. So it's a great dilemma to cause for somebody in mixed martial arts. I'm going to attack with this choke. If you do not defend it, I'm going to choke you unconscious. If you do defend it, I'm going to elbow you into submission. Pretty good move. So Dricus Du Plessis was beating the absolute tar out of Robert Whittaker quickly after he got him to the ground. These are things that are really impressive about him, right? Sean Strickland has a good awareness for what you're supposed to do when you get down to the ground to get right back up. Extreme Couture, they're not looking to play games on the ground with you, right? They're looking to just build back up, get a base, get out of there. And I think that we saw ultimately Dricus have a lot more problems with somebody like that doesn't want to grapple than somebody that knows how to grapple and thought they had it all figured out. And Robert tried to, reconsolidate guard, and he literally got his guard passed. Dricus is stacking it up on his shoulder. He's crunching the leg in. He's letting it pass him by. He's getting heavy pressure on top. And like I mentioned, he's going to those choke series. He's looking to go knee on belly. He's a mean grappler. He's an effective grappler, and he's very, very strong. So those are all the things that he brings to the table outside of the kickboxing, outside of the, hand-to-hand combat realm that are going to be potential problem causers for the Adesanya side, right? Multiple times in the UFC, he's gone out there and secured 6 takedowns. He got 2 takedowns and a knockdown against Trevin Giles in a fight that did not last 7.5 minutes. So you just see this guy, Dricus Du Plessis, he's got the kill switch on the hands. They call him Stillknocks. He's got knockout power with his hands, right? And sometimes it doesn't look clean. Sometimes it doesn't look the most technical, but he'll go pop, pop, and just hit somebody with the force of thunder, and they will hit the floor. And I think that you have to remember that this is a guy that can go out there and secure wins in a few different ways, right? He can wrestle. He can fight for 25 minutes. He can throw 100+ significant strikes, but he can also go out there and knock your head off, right? He can just clean knock you unconscious. So I think that Dricus Du Plessis is a real fighter, is a deserving champion, but he's got a really tough assignment, right? One of the things that you see in the record of a guy like Dricus Du Plessis, he's only got 2 losses, right? So it's hard to infer a lot of problems. However, we see a lot of his fights, he kind of has his chin a little bit high, and he takes a lot of risks. He crashes into the pocket. He's throwing a lot of big shots. He's really putting himself out there, and that's why we love him, and that's why he lands a lot of shots, and that's why he keeps going to the low kick and having success, because he's putting things in front of you upstairs. He does a lot of things that are really smart. He's a good kickboxer. He mixes things up to different levels of the body. But the guy who's a little bit more seasoned and a little bit more credentialed as a kickboxer is a guy he used to train with, Israel Adesanya, right? A guy that he got some rounds in with in the past, because Izzy's been a guy that has the credentials at the highest levels of kickboxing. He's been in these big matchups. He's had a ton of kickboxing fights. And so I do think the question marks around Izzy are what Hunter's bringing up, right? Where is his confidence at? He's coming off of, like I said, 2 losses in his last 3 fights. A lot of champions struggle when they're in that kind of position. But I noted the fact that I do think Israel is mentally strong. I think that he's a guy that is he a perfect fighter? Is he a perfect role model? He's none of those things. But is he a very effective fighter? Yes. Did he put a lot of the company's weight on his back for a short period of UFC's history? Yes, he did. And he wasn't everybody's favorite big star or the guy they tried to put the push behind, but he just was the guy at the time that they needed that was going out there putting on these fights. And like I said, a lot of them turned into more boring decisions than you would have hoped for. But he's an effective guy. He knows how to manage distance. He knows how to low kick. He knows how to keep people at bay. And he is the bigger guy. He is the longer guy in this fight. So Dricus is going to be the one who's responsible for closing the distance. He's going to be the one who needs to get a hold of Izzy or crash the pocket, get hands on him, land the low kicks when Izzy's trying to evade the space. There's a lot of different ways you can approach it, but we've seen a guy like Sean Strickland lay out the blueprint, by pushing forward, applying a lot of pressure to Adesanya. That is a way to get to him. That is a way to land big shots. And unlike a guy like Strickland, Du Plessis has real fight-ending power that we haven't often seen from a guy like Sean. So I think that this is a very interesting scrap. You look at Du Plessis, and he's never been knocked down in the UFC. He knocked down Marcus Maluko Perez. He knocked down Trevin Giles. He knocked down Derek Brunson. He knocked down Robert Whittaker, and he beat Sean Strickland, via close decision. That is a great resume. That is a guy who's pretty damn tough. But we also know at 185 pounds in mixed martial arts, one errant strike could change the fight. Izzy is a dangerous guy. He could put big shots on your body, your head, and your legs. And a guy like Du Plessis, he doesn't have perfect defense, right? In his last fight, absorbed 173 significant strikes. And that's something that we got to take note of, right? Even Brad Tavares, who's a good fighter, a solid fighter, a lot of people expected, myself included, Du Plessis to finish Brad Tavares. And unfortunately, they both landed a ton of strikes on each other. 113 for Du Plessis to 82 for Brad Tavares. I think that's the most strikes Brad Tavares has landed in a UFC fight. Let me fact check myself in real time. No, one time against Ricky Fukada in 2013. He landed more than that. I don't think there's another time in his career that he landed more than against Dricus Du Plessis. So Du Plessis, his big vulnerabilities and the things I'm going to be looking for on tape is how is he going to deal with the length of a guy like Adesanya? How has he dealt with big, long fighters in the past? How does he close the distance? How does he manage the distance? And is he going to try and implement the wrestling and grappling heavy style? Can he do that for the whole of the 25 minutes? And or does he know what is my path to finishing this fight? I think he can finish it a myriad of different ways, frankly. You know, I do think that Israel is live to be submitted at some point in his career. And I definitely think that you look at Du Plessis, his physical strength, his ability to go out there and hurt you on the feet, get a club and sub opportunity, or take you down past your guard, put you in bad positions. I think that his submission game needs to be respected. Now, on the other side, just because Du Plessis has been on a great run, and he has been on a great run, doesn't mean he can't get clipped on the chin. So I do think people got to respect Israel Adesanya and just say, hey, maybe I don't like his personality, but I got to respect the fighting skill and how capable and how qualified he is. And he's won a lot of these fights. He's been favored, most of the way throughout his career, if not all the way. Let's go back and look at Israel Adesanya and see if he's been an underdog at any point in his UFC career, because I can't remember a time off the top of my head. Never. 13-3 as a favorite, guys. 13-3 as a favorite. Never been an underdog one time in his career. So could we see that change this week? It's very possible. It's very possible, guys. We're looking at a Dricus Du Plessis. He was 3-1 as an underdog in the UFC, beat Robert Whittaker as a dog, beat Brad Tavares as a dog, which I bet, by the way. And who else did he beat as a dog? Let's go back and look. So my history betting these guys, that's the next thing we'll discuss, is Du Plessis, 2 units at plus 108 against Brad Tavares. Then, like I said, I took the stinker on Darren Till against Du Plessis, the only time I faded him so far in the UFC. Then I had Du Plessis against Whittaker at plus 300, and I had Du Plessis against Strickland at plus 108. So I've done a pretty good job of betting on Du Plessis fights so far throughout his UFC tenure. On the other side of things, I've struggled a little bit more with the Adesanya side, often from overconfidence, if I had to be frank, right? I bet Israel Adesanya against Alex Pereira. I bet Jared Cannonier against Adesanya. I bet Marvin Vettori against Adesanya. I bet Adesanya against Jan Blachowicz. And I bet Adesanya against Pereira in the rematch, as well as against Paulo Costa. So I've done well betting on Izzy when he was a short favorite. When he was a big favorite, I lost my ass twice on him. So I think that what you have to remember is that a guy like Du Plessis, he's a little bit younger. He's a little bit closer to his prime. And he's a guy that has an ability to go out there and put people in bad positions, right? Using his pressure, using his pace, using his ability to mix up the phases of the fight. Adesanya is a little bit more of a technician. He's a guy that can chop you down with the leg kicks. He's a guy that can go out there and hurt people bad. You know, when he's a motivated fighter, he could be a dangerous fighter. Yeah, the Marvin bet was not a good bet, Hunter. I will give you that one. So I always say, own the wins, own the losses, right? I just haven't been great at betting on Izzy fights. And in this odds range is when I have bet on Izzy in the past. You know, I bet him when he was minus 132 against Pereira. And then I bet him when he was minus 176 against Paulo Costa. So, you know, I have looked for these spots when Izzy was a low-priced favorite. However, I think that at this stage of his career, it's a lot harder to get behind him, given his age, given where he's at in his career. But I have to think the motivation's at an all-time high, given the personal rivalry between the two. You know, I don't think that's manufactured. I do think that Du Plessis puts off a kind of vibe that Izzy is not very fond of, right? And I think that meanwhile, you know, Du Plessis just doesn't buy into Izzy as like the guy, as like a really dangerous, tough guy, right? He just thinks of him as, you know, not that guy. So for me, I see both guys as very confident coming into this fight. I see both guys as had, you know, a lot to prove. So I look at the odds, right? I pull up my friends over at Fight Numbers. They've got the best available odds on all of these fights, right? And the best available price is what we're looking for right now. Plus 100 on Dricus Du Plessis. So it's come down pretty considerably, right? And Dricus Du Plessis was a underdog plus 115, plus 118, plus 125 last week. Not the case anymore. Now he's plus 100, best available. That's on Pinnacle Sportsbook. You're looking at an Israel Adesanya best available price at Circa Sportsbook minus 110. Wow. This is a good one, guys. The bookies agree. It's a close one. The market agrees that it's a close one. A lot of people on both sides of this fight. Let's go ahead and look at the Tapology votes. 51% Adesanya, 49% Du Plessis. You cannot get closer than that. So it seems like a pick'em on paper. Seems like a pick'em in the market. So I'm going to let the research be my guide. I'm going to do a lot of tape study, and hopefully that will tell me what I need to know for this fight. We've got one guy with a lot of momentum in Dricus Du Plessis, but another guy who's a seasoned champion, a guy with a great legacy and resume, and he is highly motivated. So I think both guys are going to bring it, and I think both guys are live to win the fight by knockout. I think what maybe separates Du Plessis is his ability to win this fight via submission, take the fight to the ground. But ultimately, I don't know if his grappling upside is enough for me to think he should be favored, when I think that Izzy is the guy who's a little bit longer, who can dictate the range a little bit. And we just saw Du Plessis can be outlanded at distance as recently as his last fight. So very good stuff. I'm excited to see this one play out. I think ultimately, pre-tape, I have to lean ever so slightly with the champion. One thing I've always stuck by is that when the champion comes in as a plus money underdog, I always find that a little bit of slight disrespect, right? Like people don't believe that the champion is worthy of any respect. But in this case, I understand it because both guys are champions, worthy of respect. So I think they're both going to get a lot of respect at the window. And I do think that there was sharp action on Du Plessis that brought this market price down personally. So interesting fight.